In stories, we often see main characters face intense suffering, whether it's facing their worst fears or losing everything they hold dear. But why do authors and writers put their heroes through such trials? Does this suffering enhance the story, or simply add unnecessary drama? Don't fear, as we'll dive into the role of suffering in fiction, exploring whether it truly makes a story better or is a narrative tool that must be used with care. Let's unpack how suffering can impact a character and story. Now, what does it mean to suffer? Suffering is generally defined as enduring pain, disability, or death. When people say that a character is suffering, they usually mean that said character is going through a prolonged experience of emotional, physical, or mental anguish. Stories like Jujutsu Kaisen, Berserk, and Re:Zero all feature characters who experience intense suffering. So the fandom has grouped them and called them strugglers. The struggler archetype is often praised because audiences see the character's struggle as a mark of good writing. Since the characters go through so much, the story must be well written. However, not all characters of this type are created equal. In some stories, suffering is used effectively to deepen characterization. In others, the suffering feels disconnected from the character's true nature. Let's look at Re:Zero as an example of suffering done well. In the case of Re:Zero, Subaru's suffering is brought upon by his ability to return by death. This power is both a blessing and a curse. While it allows Subaru to correct his mistakes, it also forces him to confront his past failures. As someone who initially avoided dealing with his failures, Subaru fell into a cycle of avoidance, becoming a shut-in after not meeting his father's image. Subaru sank into this shut-in mentality and took less responsibility for his actions, eventually shifting the blame for his behavior onto his parents. Subaru's suffering is born directly from who he is as a character. This is best shown when Subaru disrespects Emilia by declaring himself as Emilia's knight in front of everyone in the capital. Subaru's actions are understandable. Having just saved Emilia, he feels compelled to defend her when he sees her facing discrimination. However, his well-intentioned decision backfires. Julius, an Imperial Knight who embodies the true spirit of knighthood, criticizes Subaru for his pride and lack of discipline, leading to a confrontation. Emilia is left embarrassed by Subaru's behavior. But why is Subaru discussing something he clearly doesn't understand? Why does he agree to fight Julius despite being unable to defend himself? And what's with his unsettling expression? The answer lies in conflict. People often hide their true selves. From a young age, we learn to navigate society by suppressing our immediate impulses, whether it's shouting, stamping our feet, or demanding our way. However, these behaviors often resurface under pressure. As the saying goes, in our darkest moments, we discover our true selves. This means that while we present a false image of ourselves, our true nature is revealed when we face adversity. In storytelling, suffering is a form of conflict that exposes this true self, pushing characters beyond their facade, and revealing their genuine nature and vulnerabilities. This is particularly true for Subaru. He presents himself as funny, friendly, and cheerful, but deep down, he wishes to be seen this way. Subaru's true self, his weak, arrogant, and selfish traits, emerges when faced with someone of higher status and respect. Conflict is a tool to reveal a character's true nature, and suffering intensifies this process. Subaru must endure repeated hardships until he either embraces change or decides to give up. This demonstrates how suffering functions in storytelling. It forces characters to reveal their true selves. For this to be effective, the character must have an aspect of themselves they're trying to avoid, something they dislike. Suffering alone is not enough. It must be combined with well-developed characterization and believable actions. The suffering must make sense within the character's internal struggle and personal growth. In Re:Zero, the concept of dramatic irony is used to explore two parallel stories. On the one hand, we see Subaru trying to do the right thing, as perceived by those unaware of his return by death ability. On the other hand, we witness the true story of his repeated failures and suffering. This dual perspective allows us to understand both Subaru's pain when confronted by Emilia and Emilia's feelings. This creates an additional layer of conflict from Subaru's character. Furthermore, Subaru's inability to explain the situation due to his curse adds another dimension to his suffering. To others, whenever Subaru acts in a way that reveals his true self, he appears to be unhinged. But we know what it took to get him to this point. Re:Zero serves as an example of suffering done well in storytelling. It adds to the narrative, shows who the character is, and shows how they grow for the better. However, there are wrong ways to approach this as well. This can be seen in Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, what would you say if I asked you who Yuji is? What would stand out to you? I'd say Yuji is Mahito. Well, enough with the jokes. But a smart fan would say Yuji's an insecure teen who hides his lack of self-worth in his duty to be Sukuna's vessel. But does the story properly show this idea? I would say no. Yuji's true self is marked as someone who's lonely or a loner. He lacks purpose and clings to his grandfather's words. Yuji's suffering is best shown when Sukuna uses his body and kills hundreds. Then his teacher and friend are killed. These events break Yuji's resolve. Yuji was told by Gojo that being Sukuna's vessel would save people, but at this point, it's only brought suffering. We've reached Yuji's low point. and we see what he truly thinks. What he thought was his conviction was actually an excuse, and he can't forgive himself. Some have interpreted this as Yuji implying that his conviction was just an excuse, rather than Yuji's conviction being weakened by the constant death he's faced. They say that Yuji's true self is one who had to convince himself that being Sukuna's vessel is a good thing. In reality, it wasn't, and he's scared of dying, so he'll cling to an excuse. This is not true, as Yuji in the story play into Yuji's conviction. Yuji believed that he was strong enough, as shown by his fight against the grasshopper. He was willing to sacrifice himself, as shown in his fight in the Versus Mahito arc. And Yuji believed he would not lose, as shown at the end of the Versus Mahito arc. Yuji's suffering is supposed to test his resolve, and show who he truly is. It gives him a new outlook on meaning. Everything culminates in Yuji rejecting his path to find meaning and accepting that his actions do not need meaning. The issue comes from the fact that Mahito compared himself to Yuji, before Yuji made his claims of being Mahito. If Yuji had displayed traits similar to Mahito before the fight and was actively trying to avoid them, it would make sense. Yuji's new idea of being the one to keep killing curses and being a cog in a machine is not that different from what we already knew. In Jujutsu Kaisen, the suffering tests Yuji's resolve and somewhat leads him to a new understanding. This conclusion rests on a shaky foundation. This shows that suffering that lacks context or is misplaced with character development may feel shallow. Suffering by itself does not create great writing. This can also be seen in My Hero Academia, where Deku's lack of characterization of the situation he finds himself in leads to a lot to be desired as the resolution feels unconvincing. Suffering does not always involve characters changing. It can be used to build the tone, mood, and theme of a story. This is best seen in the anime Made in Abyss and Casshern Sins. In Made in Abyss, we follow Riko as she journeys to the bottom of the abyss in search of her mother and to explore its wonders. Throughout her quest, both Riko and Reg face challenges. The true weight of their struggle comes from the abyss, a place of wonder and dread. The abyss, with its monstrous creatures and harsh environment, endangers and torments the characters. It symbolizes their journey into the unknown and their confrontation with their deepest fears. The constant threat of suffering, whether physical, emotional, or psychological, casts a dark and uneasy tone. The suffering in the series challenges the characters' resilience. It may even cause viewers to think about how people deal with adversity and what motivates them to keep moving forward. Made in Abyss is an example of using suffering to build a story's mood and tone. In the same way the world of Made in Abyss creates a dark and unforgiving atmosphere using the element of suffering, Casshern Sins does the same with its world. The story occurs in a world where almost everyone suffers due to Casshern's actions. Robots that would normally live forever now have to deal with the idea that they can die. The idea of the ruining and the potential death looming over the world forces the robots to act in ways they normally would not. We see them try to find meaning in their lives, ignoring their eventual end. Casshern Sins explores ideas such as purpose, meaning, and death. In episode 7, Casshern meets a humanoid robot named Lisbel, a character rich in symbolism. While other robots around her have fallen to despair, squandering their remaining time or waiting for their death, Lisbel remains driven by purpose. Her dream is to build a bell. Amid a world on the edge of destruction, Lisbel holds on to hope and continues to create. When the other robots destroy her bell and cast it from the tower, Casshern tells her that her dedication deeply moves him. As the bell rings, he finds beauty in the world's dire state, a message that resonates with Lisbel. Through her struggle, she realizes that the beauty and purpose she seeks are not just in the bell, but within herself. Casshern Sins uses the element of suffering to explore different themes, and combines this with its symbolism. The tower in episode 7 serves as a beacon of hope and a positive look at a world full of destruction. The robots that gamble their lives away are in fear of those that have a purpose. They're scared, since if someone can have a purpose, then that would really mean that they are genuinely throwing their lives away. With the use of suffering as a backdrop, Casshern Sins can show in a world falling apart, creating something beautiful, no matter how small or fleeting, can be a powerful act. Ultimately, suffering alone doesn't guarantee a great story. A story must use other elements to deliver. This can be seen in shows like ReZero and Made in Abyss. Audiences might mistakenly think a story improves because it's darker or features more pain. But this is not true. This is only an illusion since conflict is a driving force in any narrative. Failures in integrating suffering can be seen in stories like Jujutsu Kaisen and Boruto, where issues lie in how suffering is placed into the narrative. Suffering can build empathy, aid character development, and enhance themes, but it must be used thoughtfully to achieve its full potential.